Basketball-Bucksline is on. The Buckeye squad is playing ball, and we've got you covered baseline to baseline. Presented by Legacy Retirement Group. Game on now on News Radio 610 WTVN.
And welcome as we debut 2020's version of Basketball-Bucksline. I'm Matt McCoy, joining you from Columbus. Tony White, who's a man about town, doing his day job as a lawyer, is actually up at our sister stations in Cleveland, using a studio up there, as he does frequently on our Monday night show. We're here each and every Monday from 7 to 8. Tony, how are things in Cleveland for you?
Great, but you know, Matt, my heart's in Columbus, Ohio, especially with 2 losses in Ohio State with a big home game tomorrow night.
Yes, they are playing Maryland. It's actually at Maryland, so it makes it a little bit...
You really? That makes me feel better. I actually thought it was a home game.
No, that's going to make it a little bit rougher for the basketball Buckeyes hitting the road. They play at Maryland, at Indiana this week. As you mentioned, 2 straight losses. And, Tony, to me, it's been a great non-conference season, and we'll get to all of that. And by the way, if you would like to tweet at me, I already have some of you that have. I'm at Matt McCoy Radio, or you can call us at 614-821-WTVN, 614-821-9886. But it's been a great non-conference season. We'll get to that. However, the last couple of games have been concerning because it feels to me like this team has been out-toughed, out-physicaled. West Virginia and Wisconsin both playing a similar style, I would say, where they want to muddy up the game, and Ohio State couldn't fight through it. What is your read on what has happened the last couple of games to the Buckeyes?
Well, first, let's take a step back on this team. When you watch this team, and Matt, we've seen a lot of Buckeye basketball teams over the last couple decades. This one, to me, is one of the most intriguing. I mean, you look at this team, and you see so much talent. You see a lot of youth, but a lot of talent in that youth. You see good upperclassmen who can either play a role like Andre Wesson or who can lead a team in scoring and rebounding like Caleb Wesson. And you go, boy, you had freshmen from last year who are sophomores this year that you hope and should expect to take a step forward. This team is a team that could go in a lot of different directions, and most of them, I think, positive. But I think with the big group of freshmen that are playing and the lack of consistency on the perimeter, is a team that can go in some ways negative. So when you take that step back and you see what they've done in the preseason and the wins that they've compiled, at North Carolina, biggest defeat in Roy Williams' history at home. I mean, that's kind of an important byline.
Yeah.
You beat Kentucky on a neutral floor. You destroy a top 10 team like Villanova that's very young but talented. You see the potential in this team. But then you get to these last 2 games, and I think you're right. What we saw were 2 main weaknesses for Ohio State. One, there's a toughness factor about this team that I think is missing. I think it's not necessarily a mental toughness factor because they've played in tough games. They've beaten tough teams, and they've won on neutral sites and away. So, I think they're mentally ready to play the game, and I think they have the mental fortitude to fight their way through games. What I see, though, is that when teams come out, and like you're going to see in the Big Ten over and over and over again, Ohio State, even though they just play West Virginia and Wisconsin, that's like 2 Big Ten games right there because West Virginia is a big physical team.
Absolutely.
And you saw West Virginia and Wisconsin kind of challenge Ohio State physically and say, we're going to play you tough. We're going to beat you up a little bit. This year I think the officials have become, all throughout college basketball, have become a little bit more forgiving on the contact that, for years we've been trying to get out of college basketball. I think you see more contact going on in college basketball right now. And I think Ohio State reacted very poorly to those types of challenges. And I think what we saw is them kind of retreat back in the face of that, physical attack by both West Virginia and Wisconsin. And I think that combined with a lack of consistency that you see a lot with young teams who don't have guys who have a great big resume in college basketball handling the basketball a lot, because Ohio State's very young on the perimeter for the most part, except setting aside C.J. Walker. This is a team, the consistency and the toughness are the 2 parts of this team that I think are not where they need to be.
Is it a correlation that they have lost struggled these last two games when in the first game against West Virginia, Kyle Young was not 100%. He was throwing up before the game, and then we subsequently found out it's because he had appendicitis and thus did not play against Wisconsin. How much, especially in those style of games, Tony, not to make excuses for Ohio State, they were both games that I feel like was there for them to win. But it seems to me those are the style of games where a Kyle Young's absence is magnified. Would you agree?
I agree with that completely because Kyle Young brings that physical toughness, that kind of stick his nose in there offensively and defensively on the glass, compete with your body type of a player. And when you look around, where does Ohio State get that if it's not Kyle Young on a consistent basis? E.J. Liddell's a very young kid and looking a little bit like he's struggling right now. I mean, looking a little bit like that freshman wall's hitting a lot sooner than nobody hoped it was going to hit. And, Caleb Wesson is not a guy who can go out there and be physical because you don't want him to really risk those fouls. Andre Wesson's undersized to play that role. So who is Ohio State's physical guy on the post, consistently, defensively, offensively on the glass? It's Kyle Young. And he's been out the last two games. That I don't believe in coincidences. That has to be a part of what we've seen here. But what we've also seen is nobody really stepping up and filling that toughness and that physical role that I think a good team has to have, especially in a conference like the Big Ten.
The other thing that has been bothersome to me watching this team, even during their successes, is they're really careless with the ball at times. The turnovers really get in the way. And when you're in low possession games like they've been the last couple, you can't turn the ball over. The West Virginia game, 21 turnovers. I mean, you're not going to win a game against them. And that's part of West Virginia's MO. Bob Huggins plays the pressure defense. He wants to turn it over. I mean, they generate turnovers, but 21 is way too many. So when we talk about toughness, a lot of times you think about toughness in the post. I also look at it as with the basketball. Like, can you execute when people are being physical with you? Can you be tough with the basketball? And I think this team has the ability to do that, but they've lacked it the last couple of games in my mind. Would you agree?
I agree with that. I think, look, the 21 turnovers against West Virginia just was a highlight on a problem that's been consistent with this team all year. It wasn't just not like they took care of the ball every game and then West Virginia they had 21 turnovers. They've been kicking it around pretty hard all year. Yep. I mean, this is a team averaging essentially 14 turnovers a game, which is fourth worst in the Big Ten Conference. So you're talking a team that's been consistently ranked in the top 10 with the fourth worst turnover ratio in the Big Ten Conference. I mean, that's kicking around with Rutgers and all those teams down there. That's not good. And when you look at who's committing the turnovers, yeah, you expect your freshmen to be kicking it around some. I mean, DJ Carton tied for the lead with almost 4 turnovers himself. Almost 3 turnovers himself. You kind of expect that a little bit from a freshman guard. But Caleb Wesson is averaging 3 turnovers a game. He's your junior center. He's a guy who, he handles the ball a lot because they run the offense through him. But 3 turnovers a game from your post guy, that's kind of hard to do. I mean, you really have to work hard to have 3 turnovers a game for your post guy. And I think that's a symptom of a larger problem for this team. It's not just one guy. The whole team tends to be careless with the basketball. I mean, you saw it against Wisconsin. They had 14 turnovers against Wisconsin, a good defensive team, but by no means was Wisconsin pressing Ohio State. Those were 14 turnovers that happened mostly in the half court and bad decisions in transition. It's really hard to win consistently having 14 turnovers a game.
By the way, Tony, I was looking at it. This is your 23rd year doing this with WTVN, which is remarkable to me because the years kind of run together. It does not seem like it's that long as we kick this off. And it was striking me how things have changed since we started this. There was no social media.
No.
It did not exist.
So, Matt, really, Matt, really? I mean, why don't you just call me old? Call me old. Call yourself old. Well, let's just tell everybody out there we're old geezers.
I remember getting handwritten letters.
Oh my gosh.
With people with questions. A guy from up in Michigan, he also would call us at times.
Were they chiseled on a stone pallet? Were they chiseled on a stone pallet?
And now we're getting some social media questions. Lisa says, great to hear you guys back on the air again. Always love the show. My question is about DJ Carton. Feel like he was a star early in the season, but has disappeared the last couple of games. How would you get him back on track? I would like to see him start over C.J. Walker. Your thoughts? That is from Lisa.
Yeah, boy. Look, first of all, I cringed every time in the first 5, 6, 7 games. How many times did you hear TV announcers go, boy, that DJ Carton, he's a special player. Boy, we can't wait to see him do special, terrific, wonderful, super fantabulous things. And by the way, do you think DJ Carton and his family and friends were listening to that? Of course they were. And so what do we see from DJ Carton? We see a kid with tremendous skills. I mean, tremendous skills. I think he's going to be a great player at Ohio State. Just not right now. He's got tremendous skills. But he's trying to make, Dennis Hopson, Jimmy Jackson, Michael Redd, Scooney Penn moves all at the same time as a freshman who's played, 3 Big Ten games. The guy is going way too fast right now and trying to do way too much. And so what you see is a kid who has, averaging 3 turnovers a game, a kid who goes against Wisconsin and plays 21 minutes, doesn't make a shot, and has 4 turnovers. I mean, 0 points, 4 turnovers in 21 minutes. Yikes. Yeah. I mean, that's not working.
Yeah, his upside is tremendous, without question. And it's probably higher than C.J. Walker's upside.
True.
However, I think Chris Holtmann is starting C.J. Walker because he's a veteran and he trusts him more with the basketball. But if DJ Carton's playing well, he has shown Chris Holtmann as that, hey, I'm going to ride with this kid. The Kentucky game, he was sensational. So I think that's what you're going to see. I mean, he's a freshman. He's playing a little bit like a freshman, a talented freshman who's going to have some ups and downs this year.
Well, look, if you started DJ Carton and you played him, right now, I mean, C.J. Walker against Wisconsin had 32 minutes, and DJ Carton had 21. If you flip those, would that game have changed? Not the way DJ Carton was playing, not at all. If you started him and committed to play Carton 30-plus minutes a game for the rest of the season, you would probably win some games that you otherwise would not have won. Now, the question is, would you lose more games that you otherwise would have won but for him playing the way he sometimes plays as a freshman? Again, it's not a dig on the kid. He's a freshman, and freshmen sometimes go out there and throw up on themselves because they're freshmen. They don't quite know what it takes to play consistently, and they try and do too much. So, I think Chris Holtmann's trying to have his cake and eat it too. He wants to play C.J. Walker, play him, get those steady minutes from an upperclassman, and then play DJ Carton and see what happens. Kind of run him out there and, okay, how's he going to play tonight? And if it's one of those nights where he is special and he's doing great stuff, guess what? He's going to play a heck of a lot more than 21 minutes. But if it's one of those nights like Wisconsin, he's going to come over and he's going to sit down and he's not going to have a lot of minutes because you can't win with a guy playing with the basketball in his hands the way he does when he's just out of control and looking like the Tasmanian devil.
Keep your comments coming. I'm at Matt McCoy Radio on Twitter. I always have my Twitter page open during Bucksline. We'll get to more of your questions there. You can also call us at 614-821-9886. That's 614-821-WTVN. Our season debut of Basketball-Bucksline. Former Buckeye captain Tony White joining me, Matt McCoy. When we come back, Tony mentioned something during his comments about the Wisconsin game and how that one got away from Ohio State that I want to get into a little more deeply. We'll go to that when we come back. Basketball-Bucksline underway in 2020 on News Radio 610 WTVN.
610 WTVN, Columbus's news, traffic, and weather station.
I thought we did maybe a few things better than I thought just with the naked eye, but was still really disappointed in our rebounding and physicality in some areas.
That is Chris Holtmann today talking about after he reviewed the tape of the Wisconsin game and where things got away. Matt McCoy with you, along with former Buckeye captain Tony White, our basketball analyst here on WTVN as we debut Basketball-Bucksline. Tony, I want to get into, you commented about officiating and about it seems like watching college basketball, they're letting it get more physical than it has been the last couple of years. And I want to be careful because I don't want to make this sound like it is a complaint about the officiating, because it is what it is. And Ohio State, the last couple of games, had opportunities to win those games, however they were called. And if it's going to be called that way, you've got to tough it out. Having said that, there was a few different clips that were shown during the game Friday that appeared on social media of Caleb Wesson trying to get position in the post, getting pushed off of it. Clearly, more than what you would expect to be able to get away with that Wisconsin was getting away with. A couple times he got slapped or whatever. But more than plays with the ball, when you're in the post and you're Caleb Wesson, and quite honestly, he was the only thing Ohio State had going on Friday night offensively. And Ohio State wanted to get him the ball and couldn't because Wisconsin's manhandling him and he's not getting calls. What do you do as a post player trying to post up when you're getting mugged and they're not calling it? What is your recourse? Because clearly he's a guy that needs to get the ball down there, and they struggled to get him the basketball, and Wisconsin, to their credit, got physical with him. They weren't calling it. So what do you do? What is your counter as a post player if you're Caleb Wesson in those situations?
Well, first of all, that is a great question, and I think a question that Caleb really is going to have to answer as the course of the season rolls on. But let me go back. Let me react quickly to that Holtman clip. I listened to him after the game, right after the game against Wisconsin. It sounded like he was going to go out there and jump off a bridge. I mean, he was so down after that game. I mean, really down. You could tell how disappointed he was in his team because it wasn't that Wisconsin was better, more talented. It was that they wanted it more, that they were tougher, that they competed harder. And you could see that in his demeanor. And Chris Holtman, you could tell, does not like to lose games. Look, you like that. I mean, you can lose games to teams that are more talented or they shoot better that one night than you do. But to get out-toughed, to get out-rebounded, to look like you're working harder for the game than his team, you could tell he was not happy about that, and that was really affecting him. Sounds like he saw a better performance on film than he saw in the naked eye, but still not so much better.
Right.
So back to your question, I would say this. Unless something changes mid-course college basketball this year, this is what we're going to get. You're going to get a lot more contact both on the ball handler. You're going to get a lot more contact in the post. We've seen that so far in the first half of the year. Caleb Wesson is a guy who, first of all, he's got a little bit of a mark on his back because he's had years of having foul trouble. So it's harder for him to react and play in that style of officiating because the whistle's going to be quicker on him than it is going to be on other people. Right or wrong, it's just the way it is. He's got himself a little bit of a reputation. I think what he's got to do is he's got to be more active. He's got to set up his guy more, and he's got to be willing to bail out. It's one thing to set up your guy, go to a block, get on the block. You're going to have to make some counter moves to keep that guy off your back. But you can't stand there and you can't let the guy push you out. Once you feel like you've lost that war a little bit, you can't be stubborn and be in there and keep fighting and keep trying to get to that block because you're not going to get there and your guard's going to move on. You got to move off the block and set your guy up again. It's kind of like just coming back and forth, probing until you find the right spot on the block. And it really requires, Matt, that your guards understand what you're doing and see you do it and work with you. Because if you're on the block and you're struggling, what you want to see from the guards is not that they keep trying to push it into you, but they find a quick reversal way, get the ball across the court quickly so that you can move to the other block, have the advantage, set up, then get the ball right there. It requires this type of post defense where physicality is going to be in a much higher magnitude, really requires Caleb Wesson to work in combination with those guards much more efficiently and effectively for him to get the ball on the block and be able to do something with it.
Yeah, you can be, even if Caleb Wesson gets position, you still have to have the guards that can feed the post.
Right.
And so it's a two-way street. I mean, they've got to do things to help him get set up. Phone lines are open at 614-821-WTVN. Jeff dialed that number. Jeff, you're on Basketball-Bucksline.
Hi, Jeff. Jeff, how's everyone tonight?
We're doing good, Jeff. What's up?
Hey, good. I really haven't had any complaints with Chris Holtman for his 3 years. I thought he's done everything right, but I thought he's done something kind of egregious. And no, the press has not picked this up, and namely the over-recruiting. As you know, he has always preached about having 11 or 12 scholarships. And what that does, if you recruit 3 guys per year, that'll always give you the option of recruiting a McDonald's All-American in the spring or getting a high prime type of transfer. So number one, he's over-recruited with 14. And everyone's assuming that Wesson leaves. But what if Wesson gets mono, sprains an ankle, or decides that, I need another year of learning how to play against bigger taller, stronger, athletic people, then he's going to have to move someone out of the program. Number two, I just don't understand why that he over-recruited for the two guys that are coming in next year. That are both outside the top 100. This recruiting class, 3 of the 4 are top 50, but Ibrahima is way outside the top 100. So essentially, the last 3 recruits he's recruited are outside the top 100. So if Seth Towns wants to come home, he can't come home because there's no openings. And I think it's, and also the 2 guys that he's bringing in next year is not of a position of need, because he needs a center that has some offensive skills. Next year, there's not going to be any center. Number 2, the average height on the team is going to go down about 2 or 3 inches, because when the Wessons leave, and he's replacing him with a guard and another 6'7" forward that he doesn't need. And I think these are a lot of concerns that he's boxed himself in, and I think the best basketball is this year, because next year is certainly not going to be as good. Tony, I appreciate listening to you, and please give me your thoughts.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
All right, Jeff, those recruits, by the way, are Eugene Brown, who's a shooting guard, 6'6", out of Georgia, and Zed Key, who's the power forward, 6'7". And Tony, we're up against a break. But real quickly, I would say, and I understand that there is a lot of talk about Caleb Wesson leaving after this year. You know, he worked out with the Atlanta Hawks and made the smart decision. And I get it. I know guys want to leave. I really think he needs to come back.
Well, Matt, I'm with you.
I really do. I think he feels like a 4-year college player who could have a pro career.
Matt, that's exactly right. I don't think Caleb Wesson right now is a first-round pick in the NBA draft. I mean, I think he's a very, very, very good college player. I just don't think he's a first-round pick. And if you're not a first-round pick, you come back and you play college. And maybe you make yourself into a first-round pick. Maybe you don't. And, right now, when you look at Caleb Wesson, you look at the NBA game, is he a center in the NBA? I'm not sure he has that size. Is he a power forward? Not right now, because he doesn't run the court and handle the ball like NBA power forwards do these days. So what exactly is he in the NBA? To me, he feels like a guy who's going to have a tremendous career overseas in Europe and make a lot of money. But that's not why you leave Ohio State before the end of your 4th year.
All right. When we come back, we'll address the rest of Jeff's question and also get to some of your other questions. I got some on social media. Basketball-Bucksline underway, but as we hit the break, it's time to put $1,000 in your hand on News Radio 610 WTVN.
Basketball-Bucksline is on. The Buckeye squad is playing ball, and we've got you covered baseline to baseline. Presented by Legacy Retirement Group. Game on now on News Radio 610 WTVN.
Matt McCoy, Tony White back with you. It's Basketball-Bucksline on News Radio 610 WTVN, our season debut. The Buckeyes with 2 games this week, tomorrow at Maryland, and then Saturday at noon against Indiana. The Maryland game, by the way, is on ESPN, and the Indiana game is on Fox this week, if you're looking for those 2 road games for the Basketball Buckeyes. By the way, I know, Tony, your focus is divided right now because the big sporting event of the night just kicked off, the Lendingtree Bowl, with Donovan White and the Miami Redhawks taking on Louisiana. Where is the Lendingtree Bowl? Actually, what state is that in?
Beautiful downtown Mobile, Alabama.
That's a heck of a bowl trip.
That's one heck of a bowl trip. But you know what? They did get to see the USS Alabama Memorial and send me a bunch of pictures from that, which was pretty cool. And they have like a big Mardi Gras parade in Mobile, Alabama, around the Lendingtree Bowl. Probably because there's not much else to do in Mobile, Alabama in January. But they had a big party, and it looked like everybody was having a great time. So I think the town does a good job of kind of celebrating that bowl. But yes, the Redhawks and the University of Louisiana, whatever they are going at it right now, and let's hope the MAC champions prevail.
It's the final college football game before next week's national championship game. So Very cool.
Is there a national championship game this year?
I'm trying to.
I just blacked it out. After about a week ago, I blocked it out.
All I know is there's Basketball-Bucksline next Monday. That's
exactly right.
That's where it begins and ends with me. Getting back to the second part of Jeff's question before we hit the break about over-recruiting, and I know recruiting makes your head hurt. You hate discussing those things. But in terms of spaces and scholarship numbers, I tend to think that Chris Holtmann and his staff probably know more about what may happen down the road than any of us do. Whether it is, this day and age, guys transfer so often. And I don't know if he has a read on guys that may transfer, may not transfer, or if everybody stays, maybe he's totally good with that. I don't know. But I tend to think I'm going to defer to him and the staff in terms of those kind of things. Because he's done a pretty solid job everywhere he's been.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think, this year's recruiting class should make Buckeye fans feel pretty good about Chris Holtmann's ability to recruit. I mean, you got 3 top 50 recruits out there. And I'll tell you, right now, DJ Carton looks like the best of the group. But I'll tell you right now, that E.J. Liddell, by the time he's done here, that young man's going to be good. I mean, he's going to be good. He has shown the ability to compete physically, with his athleticism. He's got a little bit of a basketball knowledge about him that you play when you see good players in the post. I mean, this young man, as he hones his offensive skills, is going to be a really good player. I think DJ Carton's going to be a really good player. Gaffney's got all the physical tools. He just, weighs about 25 pounds. They got to get a lot of weight on that kid. But you saw what he could do physically, athletically. I mean, those are 3 pretty good recruits. And, it's hard for me, Look, I know everybody likes to watch, who's ranked this, who's ranked that. Every time somebody comes up to me and says, hey, are we concerned we don't have a top 100 recruit, or we're recruiting this guy and he's not in the top 100, why would we do that? My response is, I vaguely recall a 6'6" kid out of Illinois who was not a top 100 recruit named Evan Turner, who went on to be the best player in college basketball. So it's not necessarily where you end up as a freshman, it's where you end up as a senior. And a lot of times, people just have a knack for finding really good players who are not in that top 100 realm.
Kyle Young was not a highly sought-after kid. He's a very valuable member of the team. You look at Eugene Brown, his recruiting ranking, the kid that's coming in next year, 114 nationally. Zed Key is 161. They are both higher than Dwayne Washington was. He was 167 when he was recruited, and Dwayne's kind of fit a nice role with Ohio State and is developing nicely as a sophomore. So you never can tell with those things. Sometimes guys that are highly recruited bust. Sometimes kids that are lower recruited don't. But obviously Chris Holtmann and his staff saw something in these kids that led him say they should be Buckeyes.
And Dwayne Washington's a great example of that, man. I mean, Dwayne Washington, as low as you've talked about him being ranked, he's their second leading scorer. He's really their number 1 perimeter threat. And, he's a guy who has to be accounted for. He's in the top 2 in the Big Ten in three-point shooting. I mean, this is a kid who's a weapon all of a sudden, and he's a guy that other teams have to account for. And, you wouldn't have expected that from his recruiting ranking, that somebody, in their mother's basement in their underwear put on next to him before when he came out as a senior. This is a kid who's got physical skills and physical talent, and the question is, can he continue to grow the way he's done in his first year and a half at Ohio State?
I really like the way he plays. Now, he was only 6 for 19 against Wisconsin, but which is not good, obviously. No. But this is going to sound weird because you're like 6 for 19, stop shooting. But there's part of me that likes his aggressiveness, that he understands his role on the team is to get the team going and to be that perimeter scorer. So where is the balance, Tony, with you? He goes 6 for 19. He's scored 18 points, but with 19 shots, that's too many. Where's the balance with you for him to be aggressive like you need him to be for this basketball team versus let's play a little bit smarter?
Well, Matt, on a better perimeter team, a more consistent perimeter team, Dwayne Washington would need to cut those shots back. And I think as a coach, you'd be coaching him to cut those shots back, but not for this team. I mean, if Dwayne Washington's not taking those shots, who's going to be taking them?
Right.
That you can say is going to go out there and consistently drain those shots. Yeah, DJ Carton can make shots, but he doesn't make them consistently. Luther Muhammad has shown he can make those perimeter shots, but he doesn't make them consistently. CJ Walker, same thing. He can make those shots, but not consistently. The guy who has made those shots game in and game out has been Dwayne Washington. And yes, when he gets hot, he'll make 6 in a row. Then he'll go 1 for 7. Then he'll make 5 in a row. And so you've got to live through those ups and downs on this team that really, I think, one of the big pieces to the puzzle on this team by the end of the year, it's going to determine where they go, is going to be how well their perimeter guys develop offensively and can start leading the team when teams start really focusing on Caleb Wesson. And the only guy who's really shown the ability to go out there and make those perimeter shots and lead this team when Caleb Wesson is being swarmed has been Dwayne Washington. So right now, the light could not be more green for Dwayne Washington. His job is to go out there and make shots. And if you miss 4 in a row, we'll just believe the next 3 are going to go in.
All right, I've got several questions on Twitter that I haven't gotten to. I want to get to those before we get out of here, so we'll do those when we come back. Also talk about that game against Maryland and Indiana this week. It's Basketball-Bucksline. Matt McCoy, Tony White with you on News Radio 610 WTVN.
News Radio 610 WTVN, an iHeartRadio station.
We played well against Villanova. Villanova's a good team, even though, Jay would be the first one to tell you they probably have some flaws. We won at North Carolina. We're not taking any of those wins and giving them up. But really, I'm trying to just keep them focused on, the day-to-day. I think there's probably a greater understanding among our young guys at how competitive Big Ten play is and how good our league is. And the reality is it's certainly this week it's not getting any easier.
Chris Holtmann today talking about the back-to-back losses after such a successful non-conference season. It ended with a non-conference loss to West Virginia, but then a conference loss to Wisconsin as the Buckeyes are 1-2 in league play because of that December loss to Minnesota. But I think the message there, Tony, was, hey, let's not panic. Yes, it hasn't gone well the last couple games, but this is the same team that did all those great things earlier this year.
Yeah, it's one of those things where as a coach, you're trying to get these kids to have short memories on the bad stuff and great long memories on the good things. You want to remember that you're a good team, that you beat these teams either on neutral sites, on the road, or at home. And now you got to take some of those principles that you learned. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're showing these kids, okay, what didn't we do well against Wisconsin and West Virginia, and showing them back in some tape from old games against Kentucky and North Carolina and Villanova where they did the exact same thing well. And they say, look, guys, we know we can do this against the best teams in the country. Look at us doing it over here. Now, look at us in the last week doing it over here and not doing it the way we're supposed to. We got to get back to this stuff, and that's a great way. And coaches do that all the time. It's a great way to reinforce the positive. Look at the great stuff we did over here, but to coach through the negative, look at the bad stuff we're doing right now.
I got to share this comment on Twitter. Our friend Rusty Miller from the Associated Press, who actually in our years of Basketball-Bucksline has been a guest on the show, he tweets at me, besides Tony White, who's the best player Tony White has ever seen in person?
Well, first of all, I'm glad Rusty realizes that that answer would have been myself.
That's right. Yes,
but I'm gonna go. I'll let you choose as to which one I'm going to select, and this might be a surprise to you. So the first, Danny Manning.
Yeah.
The second, Len Bias.
Oh boy, great player.
I know. And the third, of course, is Dennis Hobson.
Yeah.
Now, of the three, who do you think I would select as being the best player I've ever seen in person?
I'm going to say Dennis just because you saw him so much and he had such an incredible season his senior year.
I'm going to say no.
Danny Manning?
Danny Manning. I mean, that kid, I played that kid in my sophomore year in Hawaii, and it was my responsibility whenever I was in the game. And we went to overtime and won that game against Kansas. I played him 30 minutes that game, and he scored like 27 points on me. And I remember Gary Williams coming over, after the game going, Tony, you did a great job. He could have scored 40. So, I mean,
He's
you're
that
talking,
good, yes.
oh my gosh, you're talking 6'10", 6'11", who could do everything a guard could do. That's how good Danny Manning was. Clearly the best player Len Bias is up there, but Danny Manning was he was the best player I've ever played against.
Okay, let me try to whip through some of these Twitter questions. A Mark on Twitter, I'm seeing more and more players taking the baseline on Ohio State. That is a no-no to me. Is it not stressed any longer to not give up the baseline?
Well, it is stressed because you want to be able to push those players back towards the middle. And I think Ohio State has done that pretty well consistently, but I think it's a fair comment that as the defense has lapsed, when Ohio State has lapses on their defense, they tend to give that baseline up a little bit. And I think that's when they're playing a little helter-skelter defense where they're not as set. But for the most part, this has been a really good Ohio State defensive team. Number one in the Big Ten in scoring defense. I mean, that's 58 points a game. That's pretty good with some of the teams they've played against. Sure, there's a lot of cupcakes in there, but you've played some pretty good teams. And to sit right now, first week of January, number one in the Big Ten in scoring defense, that's pretty good. Baseline defense has to improve in some situational circumstances.
Jim has a comment that I think is kind of up your alley, Tony, just from my conversations with you. Jim says, I like what we've seen from Caleb Wesson this year. Kudos to him for his improvements, and his three-point shooting is good, but sometimes he seems to play outside too much for my taste. How often should he be shooting threes?
Oh, boy, I'll tell you.
Because you made a comment to me. What game was it? I think the West Virginia game.
West Virginia
you said
game.
It was way too many for your taste.
Way too many. I mean, look, I get it. It's like a major league pitcher who has a changeup. And you say, boy, a great changeup. Boy, I want to see that every now and then. But if you got two other pitches that are really good, don't throw your changeup 70% of the time. Go out there and do other stuff. Caleb Wesson is a guy who his strength is on the post. That's where he scores his points. And he throws a little changeup at teams by being able to go out to the three-point line and shoot that three-pointer if you forget about him. What I don't like to see is, 4, 5, 6 three-point shots where you go, okay, now this is not really kind of a changeup in the offense. This is the main thrust of Caleb Wesson's offense. You got to they've got to find a way to pick and choose from those shots. And I think, by the way, you're starting to see teams say, you know what? Okay. I mean,
go ahead, shoot it.
Yeah, right. I mean, if you're going to shoot it 5-6 times, you're going to need to make the first couple before we're really going to go out there and challenge you, because I think we'd rather see Caleb Wesson firing up from three than not catching the ball on the block. And so I think he's got to be cognizant of that and make better decisions about when he's going to pick and choose. I'm going to set the over-under line for Caleb Wesson three-point shots at 3. He should not take more than 3 shots unless he's made 2 of those first 3. After that, he can make some more. But if you've missed 2, you got to stop at 3.
JC on an email. It's my understanding that Musa Jallow is at the point in his recovery that he can play. With half the season gone, though, should Ohio State just sit him out and redshirt, or do you think he could provide the help off the bench that this team needs?
I would love to see them keep Musa Jallow on the bench, redshirt him, and bring him back next year. Remember, Musa came in, by the way, still one of my all-time favorite names at Ohio State.
Yes,
Musa
no
Jallow.
doubt about it.
Remember, Musa
he
came
reclassified.
In.
He's a young junior this year, yes.
Correct. Musa Jallow came in. He was supposed to be a senior in high school when he was here at Ohio State as a freshman. So he is really, really young. And for him to sit out in this year with that body, you give that kid another year and he comes back as a junior. I mean, he did some athletic things and he had some sparks and some moments that were pretty impressive. If he can learn to make jump shots consistently, boy, I'll tell you, that kid, you put a jump shot together with that kid's athleticism and you got yourself something special there.
Yeah, he had some moments his freshman year early where you're like, boy, this kid's going to be good. But
who's Musa Jallow?
Yeah,
my gosh.
He really faded. And the same thing last year. He was kind of up and down. But I thought at the end of the year last year, he was starting to play pretty consistently well. So, yeah, you almost forget that he is a part of this team. And next year, maybe he can, they're going to lose Andre Wesson. Maybe he can fill that role and then some.
I think he can. I really think that Musa Jallow is, when you look at the recruiting class for next year, you almost add him as a recruit coming in where you go, boy, we're going to get exciting things out of Musa Jallow.
Okay, last couple minutes. Key to the game tomorrow night against Maryland.
Well, Maryland's a team that great talent. But when you look at them, they kind of fail my eye test. I don't see them playing really good basketball. First of all, they're a horrible shooting team right now. You're talking one of the worst teams in Division I, bottom third in shooting the ball from the three-point line, 31%. That's a team, that struggles making shots. They're 13 out of the 14 teams. They're 13th, next to last in the Big Ten in field goal percentage. So they're awful right now shooting the ball. And their guards, as talented as those guys are really not playing good basketball. 13th, again, next to last in the Big Ten in assists. So this is a team that when I watch them play, you see some bad guard play out there, and it doesn't really make me feel like they're as good of a team as they're ranked. Their best win this year, Indiana, though their 2 losses at Penn State, at Seton Hall, those are 2 top 30-ish types of teams. So it's certainly a team you can't take lightly. I think Ohio State could go out there and really pound the ball down low, but Ohio State's going to have to cut the turnovers down and really make some shots.
Okay, last 30 seconds. Indiana on Saturday, key to winning in Bloomington.
Well, pretty much figure out a way to let the Hoosiers shoot themselves in the foot, because they tend to do that every single game now. So, kind of get out of their way so they can make their mistake. But for Indiana, you got to keep the three-point shooters down, and you got to make your own threes against Indiana.
Hey, shout out to everybody. Week 1, you never know. People realize we're on the air, but you did. A lot of great comments on Twitter and phone calls as well. Appreciate it. Tony and I are back next Monday with Basketball-Bucksline. We're here each and every Monday during the basketball season from 7 to 8 on News Radio 610 WTVN.